I don't know if I can top that. Although I understand, Mr. Chairman, that you did invite Mr. Smoot and Mr. Hawley to come and testify.
They were
I don't
busy.
see them. I don't know if they're in the audience or not, but I do recall. I knew them, but Senator Grassley worked with them
Yeah.
at that particular time. Ms. Dempsey, you're the only witness that brought up agriculture, and I appreciate that, although there was a connection, I think, with Ms. Bliss, too, and I do appreciate the two pillars and the testimony of all the witnesses. China's obviously, Mr. Chairman, been at the forefront of our trade policy agenda here in recent weeks or months, for that matter. Most significant has been the administration's enforcement actions now following the conclusion of investigations regarding Section 232, steel and aluminum imports, and Section 301, the intellectual property and technology transfer practices, which have been referred to by all of the witnesses. But as we have seen numerous times, Mr. Chairman, agriculture is often the first industry impacted when retaliatory measures are enacted. And with the recent announcement of Chinese tariffs on U.S. products, many of which are agriculture products, they're the first ones that they pick on or pick. It is clear that history may be repeating itself. I hope that's not the case. The U.S. exported nearly $20 billion in agriculture products to China in 2017. That made it one of the top export markets for U.S. agriculture. But let me point out that over the last 3-4 years, farm prices are down 40%. Farm income is down to 52%. So when we have a tariff that is announced in response to whatever negotiations are going on, and all of a sudden we find out in response to washing machines and solar panels, sorghum producers in my state, whose price was above the cost of production, all of a sudden find out their basis points are down to 80%. Boom, just like that. And in the second place, as we keep going with that now, with the additional, I don't know what to call it, I guess, measures that the President has mentioned and that the administration has mentioned, Wilbur Ross, Mr. Navarro, and Bob Lighthizer. I had a long talk with Bob Lighthizer about this here just the other night. And some of us are going up to the White House tomorrow. Obviously, we're involved in agriculture, and we're worried about the retaliation. And here we had the soybean market off 17%. The sorghum producers that I mentioned, when I was at the White House, they were in my office. And when I came back, they said, "What in God's name did you do?" You know, I said, "Hey, it wasn't me, Coach." You know, but one farmer was in tears. He said, "We just went. You know, I had to sell at this particular time." So you can see the ramifications here. So during an already challenging time for farmers, ranchers, drastic trade policy measures will have a compounding effect on producers in rural America. Everybody up and down Main Street is nervous about trade, everybody in the food chain and all the lenders. By the way, Senator Casey, and by the way, Senator Casey is a senator I really respect. He's a very valuable senator on the sometimes powerful Senate Agriculture Committee, and I understand your plea for workers with regards to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is also a big ag state, and farmers and ranchers and growers are also workers, and they work them down to dust. And I hope we don't get into a situation where one is pitted against the other. That's not what we should do. Now, what is the administration proposed here in terms of proposing tariffs? I think the President has signaled, at least in the press, and we'll learn about that possibly tomorrow, about using the Commodity Credit Corporation and using money to offset some of the problems that we have experienced with regards to prices in the farm sector. We don't need that. We do not want another subsidy program. What we want is a market. We have to sell our product. We have to sell things we make, but we also have to sell things that we grow. And we're in a rough patch in agriculture today. So I'm very hopeful, and any witness that wants to can comment about this, but I hope we don't go down that road of creating some very cumbersome and very difficult to implement, if not impossible, program from the CCC. What do you think about, the President mentioned this sometime back, hasn't mentioned it since. I hope maybe after tomorrow he'll mention it again. How about the 11 countries that joined on the TPP program? What about making efforts to get back in sync with the TPP if there's ever an opportunity for the United States to plant the American flag and also have their back and also increase trade propositions all throughout the Pacific, it would be that. That would be my best suggestion, that either that or, well, both, sell something or else signal that we're interested in getting back with the TPP. Would any of you like to comment?
Maybe I could start. I mean, the National Association of Manufacturers had wanted to see a strong TPP go forward, and we're disappointed that it did not. If there's an opportunity for the United States to get back as part of the TPP, I think that's important. It would set the rules of the international trading system. We also, though, think we have to take this moment with China. We have to act urgently to get new rules of the road. When China joined the WTO in 2001, the rules were written in 1994 for most of it, right? We didn't have an internet. We didn't have the digital economy and the cyber issues. We didn't have the growth in trade that we've now seen today. We've got to get China at the negotiating table, not just dialogues where statements are issued. We've got to get them at the negotiating table to an agreement that's fully enforceable. And if we can do that through working with our TPP partners, but we've also got to do that bilaterally.
Is it okay?
Well, thank you for your comments. My time has long since expired. Where I wrote this down, exactly what you said, searching for it.
I think, Mr. Garfield, you had a comment you wanted to respond to Senator Roberts.
I'm sorry, Mr. Garfield, please.
I think your point about farming is an apt one. One of the things that has been surprising about the discussion over the last 3 weeks around China is how much it's unified the broad business community across 3 pillars, I would say. One is the need to redefine the relationship with China. What we're doing is simply not sustainable. Second, the importance of doing things that work, which mean avoiding tariffs. They haven't worked since McKinley or Smoot-Hawley and won't work now. And then third is doing all of the things that we've been talking about in alignment here on the panel, which is developing a strategy and pushing China with clearly defined dates and accountability metrics. When China acceded to the WTO, there were no timelines against which China would do the things that it committed to do. In fact, 2 days ago, President Xi recommitted for the 5th time for China to open up its financial services sector. And so unless we push China to commit to a date certain and have a metric for measuring whether they're doing it, we'll simply continue to repeat the current cycle.
Well, let me just close by saying that I agree with the President, I agree with everybody that said, all of the witnesses, that long-term, and it's going to have to be a long-term policy with regards to China. You're not going to have systemic change in China. That may be an oxymoron. I hope it isn't. But that's one thing. But short-term, for goodness sakes, don't, in this business of playing your cards and trying to get a better deal for the United States or a better trade situation, don't do so at the expense of American agriculture, which is going through a very difficult time. And I don't like this business of using farmers and workers as pawns in this particular game, because every sector of ag now is in trouble, and they're worried to death and very nervous about that future. And I want to thank you all for your comments. Sorry for going overboard.